the BTS that you have down there?
This would be your I cell.
Okay. And L cell, where is that represented on here?
That will be L cell.
Okay. And then location, is that the switch?
It will be location.
Okay. Thank you. You can take a seat.
Thank you.
You can do that, and I'll take those. Thank you. So we discussed this earlier, Mr. Goyle, but you had mentioned it's important, obviously, to AT&T that their callers have connections everywhere where they're using their phones.
That is correct.
How does AT&T use software to figure out essentially whether their towers are covering all the areas they want them to cover?
We use in the design phase, we use a tool which is a software, and using that software we determine what is the propagation of each of our cell tower and what are the places where we do not have enough coverage for the customers.
And when you say what is the propagation for each tower, what does that mean?
Each cell tower, based on its antenna type, height, and location, the coverage could be different. So we determine that how far, which direction, where is this specific cell tower and sector is going to be covering, and with what kind of signal strength.
And how do you figure that out? In other words, how does that software work in terms of figuring out exactly how far each tower and sector covers?
The software uses formulas which we call model, and those models are designed or created using simulations. When I say simulations, and I'll spend maybe 5 minutes on this so that everyone understands how we come up with those models. To start with, we put an antenna system on a rooftop or a truck, and then we start driving that specific area and start collecting samples of the signal strength. We do this not only one time, but let's say at least 3 times in each specific area. We take 3 samples. If it's a Seattle downtown area, we will take at least 3 different samples where we will locate antennas 3 different times on 3 different buildings. And then we will collect the samples each time. Once we have all that data, then we will build that specific equation which will fit within a margin to those collected samples. That means that if I design a 4th cell tower with some specification and I use that specific formula which I came from the first 3 samples or simulations, that the coverage from that 4th cell tower or 4th antenna location should match pretty closely to what I predicted. Right? So that's the whole simulation or prediction method we use.
And so essentially, to make sure it's working, I mean, you do actual driving tests to figure out where the signals are carrying and how strong they are.
That is correct for the modeling purposes.
And ultimately, are you able to create maps for each tower that shows what you believe is the coverage area? In other words, how far that tower signal reaches and where a person would have to be to have their phone hit off of that tower?
That is correct. Those models are used to predict the coverage in specific areas.
I'm going to show you a map.
Stage Exhibit 73 to the north.
Mr. Goyle, is States Exhibit 73 a coverage map that AT&T can create to show the coverage area for separate towers?
That is correct.
Is this a map that you created?
That is correct.
When did you create this?
This specific map was created probably 4 or 5 weeks back.
And For this exhibit, is this showing coverage area that includes coverage area for towers that were relevant to the records we're discussing in this case? For example, does it include coverage areas for the tower that was 22042, which was this 11:50 a.m. call from Nicole Pietz's phone?
It does.
And this map that I just showed you, is that the coverage areas as they existed in 2006 when these calls took place?
That is correct.
And how is it that you were able to create a coverage map as it existed for 2006 coverage?
We obtained the list of sites or locations where we had the tower and what configuration we had at that point. We used that in the current tool, and we run these propagation maps to create this.
So I'm assuming that means, did you have data from 2006 still available that you can go back and retrieve?
Yes, we did.
And is that what you did here?
That is correct.
I'm going to offer Exhibit 73.
First of all, I would just note our prior objection to this map. Second of all, I would object to the large poster board version of this map going back into evidence. I think it can be used for illustrative purposes, but I would ask that the court only admit as substantive evidence a smaller
8 by 10?
8 by 10.
You have any objection to using an 8 by 10 when it goes back to jury safe space back there?
We can discuss it later. I think it's fine, but for now I'd like to use this so they can all see.
It will be admitted, and I know your objection. I think proper foundation has been there. The size of the exhibit goes back, we'll discuss later, but I concur that you don't need a lot of poster boards back in the jury room.
Mr. Grohl, I'm going to ask you to step down again. And if you want to use the pointer that the judge gave you, you're welcome to. Do you have that, Your Honor?
I have.
Thank you. If that
I
helps.
don't give it up lightly.
First of all, I just want to orient the jury to what we're seeing here. There are a bunch of different areas on this exhibit that look like little sort of triangles, and there's also some black stars. Can you tell us, first of all, what are these black stars? What do they represent on this exhibit?
Black stars are the cell site locations. If you remember the previous map where I mentioned base stations, so those are the base stations over there.
So those are essentially the cell towers themselves.
Those are the cell towers themselves.
And coming out from each of those appears to be three sort of little triangle type things.
That is correct.
What are those?
Those are the cell sectors.
Is the tower that we've been discussing, 22042, from that 1150 call, on this exhibit?
That's this specific cell sector.
I'm sorry?
That's this specific cell sector with the orangish coverage.
So can you point, if you would, to the star that represents that tower? Okay.
That would be this one.
And is that the one you've been referring to as also cell site 75?
That is correct.
And are each of those triangles a sector for that particular tower?
That is correct.
Now, it looks like there's different colors. What do the colors represent surrounding cell tower 75 that we're talking about?
Different colors represent best server coverage from each of these cell sectors.
So, best server coverage means what?
Means there is a very high probability that specific sector will be serving that specific area.
So let's talk first. First of all, why don't you tell us what color represents sector 1 of this cell tower?
The yellow sector will be sector 1 of this cell tower, and then sector 2, and this will be sector 3.
So sector 2 is sort of the orangish reddish color?
That is correct.
And sector 3 is the turquoise color?
That's correct.
So when you say best server area, are you saying that, well, let me just ask instead of saying, are you saying, if I make a phone call and my records indicate that it's hit off of sector 2 of this tower, the 22042, is this coverage area saying that I am likely to be in that area when I'm making that call?
There is a very high probability that you are going to be in this orangish coverage area.
How high of a probability?
I would say 90 to 95% probability.
And why are you able to say 90 to 95% probability that?
Based on the way we design those models and my personal experience.
So the drive testing, the software data that's been inputted?
That is true. And the modeling that we do.
And again, is the point that AT&T wants to cover every part of this sort of downtown Seattle area with coverage?
That is to provide coverage to each and every user. Yeah.
So going back to that 1150 call and using this best server map, if that call pinged off of sector 2 of this tower, what you're saying is there's a 90 to 95% probability that the phone was in this reddish orangish sector when it was being placed.
That is correct.
Okay. And why don't you explain why you don't say 100%? Why is it not 100% certain that someone was in this area if it hit off that sector?
These are radio frequencies, and you can have multiple reasons. One is your signal can bounce off from big tall buildings, glass buildings, and it can go elsewhere. Second is there could be some spillage or some kind of building obstructions which can obstruct the line of sight or the path for the radio waves. And those are few of the reasons which could cause this. There are some other minor reasons. For example, if we have a lot of congestion on a specific sector, there is a possibility that one of the closer sector will pick up that specific user.
So if it ends up that we're in the 5 to 10% chance that the handset is not in this orange area, is it likely to be close by based on the fact that it hit on that sector?
Yes, it is supposed to be closer by. As you go a little bit farther, the probability of a cell being in that specific sector reduces much and much.
Just make sure I can let you sit down here. You can take a seat. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to hand you back Exhibit 69 for a moment, the phone records. And I'm going to have you turn to the section for the Pietz phone that's 388-9615, that first section. There's a section you described entitled Calls to Subscriber SB. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Do you have that section?
I do.
There's a page 17 of calls, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's calls to destination SB, page 17 on that. Do you have that?
I do.
I just want to ask a question. There appears to be some lines where there is like 4 calls in a row that all indicate it was 7:47 p.m. Do you see that?
Yes.
Are those all the same?
Excuse me, I missed a little bit. Could we go back a second, and could I get the phone number? I missed that one.
It's the 388-9615,
388-9615.
and it's page 17 of the calls to destination SB. Are you back on that, Mr. Rowe? I just want to make sure you're back there. There appears to be several calls in a row that appear to be the same time. Are those the same call?
Those are same calls.
Okay, thank you. Were you provided, Mr. Goyle, with a list of cell tower numbers and asked to confirm what the addresses of those were in this case?
Yes, I was.
State's Exhibit 74 has been marked.
Showing you Exhibit 74. Is this the list of towers and addresses that you had in this case?
That is correct.
Now, did you verify that these tower numbers, that the addresses on here are actually the correct locations of those towers?
I did.
And are these towers that are used in these phone records that we're discussing in this case?
That is correct.
I would offer Exhibit 74.
Your Honor, I would object. I think this can be used for illustrative purposes. He can testify about the locations, but this document does not have independent relevance.
Are you objecting to it being used for illustrative purposes?
No.
Or maybe it'll be used for electric purposes, it's something highlighted in this testimony.
And I want to talk first, Mr. Goyle, just about the first one here. Actually, the first 3 lines, are these all the same tower?
These are the same cell tower.
And we discussed earlier 22042. Is that the sector 2 of Tower 75 that we were discussing in relation to Exhibit 73?
That is correct, it is.
So is 22041 Sector 1?
That is correct, the yellow on the map.
Okay, the yellow, and then 22043 would be the turquoise?
That is correct.
So is the address correct on here as to the location of that tower?
It is the correct address.
And then the rest of the towers listed here, you verified that indeed those addresses correctly reflect what those towers are?
That is correct.
States Exhibit 75.
Mr. Girl, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 75. I'll take a little bit from here. I'm going to flip to page. This page is under this document. First of all, I'm showing you a page that has a few photographs on it. Do you recognize those?
Yes, I
In
do.
other words, have you seen this report before?
I have.
And
Sorry, Council, what page are we on?
I don't know, it's not paginated, but I think it's the first page.
At the top, it says 45 calls connected.
Yeah, it's the first page, actually.
Hold on just a second, I'll use the right page. Are you there, Council?
I believe so.
It has 3 photographs on it.
Yes.
Actually, it has, I guess it's 4 photographs. One's inset on another one.
Yes, I'm there.
And Mr. Goyle, I just want to ask some general questions about this document. Is it your understanding this was prepared by a detective in this case?
Yes.
You did not prepare this?
I did not prepare this.
On this page that you're looking at, there appears to be a listing of a cell tower and then some lines going out kind of in the shape of a triangle. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And then if you flip through the next few pages, do you see the same kind of designation?
Yes.
Have you or were you asked to verify whether for particular phone calls and towers, the detective was correctly designating in these drawings the direction the sectors were pointing?
That is correct.
So is he accurately depicting the direction each of the sectors go to for these particular calls?
Directionally, it is correct.
It doesn't reflect actual coverage area, but directionally it's correct.
Directionally, it is correct.
Thank you. I'll take that back from you. Thank you. Mr. Doyle, in addition to phone records that you have talked about, were voicemails provided by AT&T to some of the phone numbers in this case?
Yes, AT&T did.
Were they provided by someone from the compliance center, Nestor Juarez?
That is correct. Nestor provided that.
And were those provided by email?
These were provided by email.
Are there different ways that voicemails can be provided to agencies requesting them from AT&T?
I am not very sure. So far, I have seen only emails.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Goyle. I don't have any other questions for you right now.
Mr. Alderbeck, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I may just move a few things around here. Let me have a minute. Good morning, Mr. Goyle.
Good morning.
We've spoken before, haven't we?
We have.
I interviewed you, a few weeks ago with the prosecutors on the phone.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the map that you have been discussing today with all these various towers and sectors and shaded areas, the shaded coverage areas here that are created by the computer program, those are dependent on all of these various towers working as they're supposed to.
That is correct.
The reality is that the towers don't always work exactly the way they're supposed to all of the time.
There are cases when they don't.
Isn't that kind of the nature of cellular technology as it stands today?
We have a very good reliability. We run at better than 99% reliability. That means, yes, there is a probability. Definitely
But-
there is a probability.
But, I mean, at a more basic level, I mean, we all have experiences with our cell phone not working right or a call being dropped. Maybe not as much these days, but maybe 8-10 years ago, we would drop calls or have problems connecting to towers.
Sure, there will be cases where you may not be able to connect.
Okay. I assume maybe you've dropped a call on your phone before.
I have,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
I have. But dropped call is not always a tower not working. Dropped call can be because you were in poor conditions, you had, something else going on, you enter in an elevator. Those are multiple cases where you can drop a call.
Sure. But the towers themselves have their own issues.
They may.
Okay. And sometimes they have maintenance issues.
Absolutely, they can.
Okay. So if a particular sector is not working properly, let's say it's having performance issues, that can affect the coverage zone of other sectors around.
That is correct. The other sectors will neighboring sectors will try to come in and take the subscribers from that specific cells coverage area.
Okay. So can you see where I'm pointing here?
Yes, I can.
So this kind of reddish shaded area down here, 22042, that's the sector related to the call that we've been discussing at 11:50 on January 28th, correct?
That is correct.
Now, if we look just to the north of it, we have this kind of teal shaded area. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And that shaded area represents projected coverage from a sector that's attached to that same cell tower. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That would be sector C.
That will be sector C.
Okay. So that's actually getting, or supposed to get, coverage from one of those antennaes that's on the same building
That is correct.
on that picture that we were looking
That is
at.
correct.
Now, let's assume that I am, say, somewhere in the middle of this teal area. Okay?
Sure.
And, but let's assume that maybe there's a maintenance issue with this particular sector.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Sure.
And I make a phone call.
Right?
My phone call can't connect to this sector
It cannot.
because it's down.
Correct.
Okay. But I'm still able to make a phone call, right?
Yes, you may.
That's AT&T's goal, is to make sure that there's enough towers to provide coverage.
Correct.
So if I make a call and I can't connect to here, then I'm going to connect to some other tower.
That is correct.
Okay. It's possible that I could connect to sector B.
There is a possibility.
Okay. And so it's possible that if I'm standing in the teal area and I make a phone call and sector A is not working, I'm connecting to sector B even though I'm not in the reddish shaded area.
There is a possibility, yes.
Okay. Well, a possibility, but I mean, in fact, if this one is down, my phone call's got to connect somewhere.
Yes, you may not necessarily connect to the orange sector. You may connect to one of the purple sector or blue sector.
Sure,
in this map. Yes.
I'm using this as an example.
Correct.
But in fact, sector B is close by.
That is.
And so as soon as one of these sectors is not working, then the map starts to change.
It will.
This red area could move north significantly to provide
certainly
coverage.
it can.
Okay. Other areas could move in as well.
That is correct.
And that's true for all of these various cell towers and sectors on the map.
That is true.
Now, in fact, weren't there actually performance this particular sector, sector C, the one I used as an example, weren't there actually performance issues with this right around the time of the relevant call that we're discussing?
No, there were not performance issues. When we say performance issues, those we generally look at the statistics from the cell tower.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a little bit about how the maintenance records are kept for particular cell towers and cell sectors. For every tower, there is a maintenance log that is kept on site.
That is correct.
And in this particular case, there is a maintenance log that's kept in the building at 1333 Stewart Street, where this tower is located on top.
That is correct.
And this maintenance log, whenever somebody goes to check on the tower or make a repair, they have to make a notation in there about the reason for their visit to the tower. Is that true?
That is correct.
And you have actually reviewed the maintenance log for this particular tower recently, haven't you?
That is correct.
Within the past few weeks?
Yes.
Okay. And is that when you went to this tower with the detectives a few weeks ago?
That is correct.
Mark, please.
Defendant's Exhibit 76.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. Gold, I'm handing you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 76 for identification. Would you look at that and tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
That's the maintenance record at cell site SC75.
Okay. Now, would you take a look at the second page and tell me if it refreshes your recollection as to whether or not there were performance issues with Sector C on January 30th, 2006?
Correct.
Correct. There
Yeah.
were performance issues.
Yes, there was work performed at that location.
Okay. So, just to clarify, on January 30th, 2006, it looks like there were two technicians who went out to this particular cell tower. Is that true?
Which date can you?
January 30th, 2006. Weren't there two technicians, a Zach Hammond from Telco Pacific and someone else named Mike from NOCC?
I'm not sure if Mike went there, but yes, there are name of two technicians over
Okay, so there's some technicians that weren't there to work on the hardware.
there. That is correct.
And the reason they went there was because there was a trouble ticket,
That is correct.
and a trouble ticket is a notification that AT&T gets that a tower or sector isn't performing properly.
It's not performing properly, correct.
And the reason that the technicians went there on January 30th, 2006 was, and it's indicated in the records, they were here to troubleshoot performance issues with Sector C.
That is correct.
And Sector C, that's the one we were just talking about. That's this teal area to the north of the red shaded area 22042. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
And just so we're clear, January 30th, that's 2 days after the particular phone call that we're talking about at 11:50 a.m. on January 28th.
That is true.
Now, when the technicians went out there to do the maintenance on the 30th of January 2006, they actually had to take that sector offline for a period of time.
Not all the time. In this specific case, they ran the diagnostics, and since I understand how diagnostics are run, in most of the cases we can run diagnostics without taking the sector down.
Okay. But they went out there and they ran some tests.
They ran some tests.
It doesn't look like they actually fixed anything, did they?
They mentioned they didn't find anything over here, and all passes.
Okay.
Ran diagnostics and everything passed.
So despite the performance issues, they didn't fix anything with the tower.
From these logs, no, they didn't find any issue at that time.
You don't have any idea what these performance issues were?
No, I wouldn't have that idea.
It could have affected the ability of phone calls to connect with this particular sector.
It could have.
It could have affected the ability of, the call capacity or so forth.
It could have, if the issue was on that specific date.
And so, more generally, with this particular tower, the records that you have looked at and that you have in front of you, which is a picture of the maintenance log, we just have a small excerpt from those records. Is that right?
That is correct.
We have from the 18th of January 2006 until February 16, 2006. So
That is just one single page, yes.
okay, so that's a little bit less than a month.
That's right.
And within that month period of time, there were 12 visits to this particular tower for maintenance.
That is
Visits,
That
is that right?
That is right.
So that's a little bit less than an average of every other day. So 12 times and a little bit less than a month.
Correct. But I would like to mention here, so for example, February 1st, February 2nd, those are just audit, and those are just site audits. So we perform these audits time to time. There are maintenance audits. There is pre-maintenance, which we call preventive maintenance. That's there too. So
Okay. But on February 15th, for instance, there's another trouble ticket, it looks like. Ticket number. You see that?
that was install of a new piece of hardware over there for a better E911 accuracy.
Okay.
So that's not a fault, but a new network added to that cell site.
If we go back to earlier in January, on January 18th, wasn't there an air conditioner system failure?
That is correct.
And on January 19th, wasn't there a hot call?
That could be result of the air conditioning failing.
Okay, there was a fan cycle switch
Yeah,
that failed?
that's part of the amplifier.
Okay. And then on January 25th, there's another note about a cooling fan being broken?
That is correct.
And all of these various devices are important to ensure that the cell tower is working properly.
That is correct.
Now, I've just been asking you about this one particular cell tower here, right?
That's true.
And those are the only records that you've looked at
That is correct.
or that have been provided to the parties in this
That is
case.
correct.
Now, for each of these other towers, there's a similar maintenance log,
That is correct.
and it's pretty fair to assume that each of these other towers has their own maintenance issues.
I'm sure.
This is not the only problematic tower in Seattle.
That's true.
Okay. So there's going to be trouble tickets for these various other towers.
That is true.
There could be parts that are broken,
That's absolutely true.
and those parts could have affected the performance of the towers and sectors.
It certainly can.
And it could have affected the ability of these particular towers to pick up calls.
There is definitely a probability.
Okay. So if I'm looking to, let's say, the west of our tower here, 75, which is going into downtown Seattle, there's, I don't know, 3 towers kind of generally to the west. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
If there were problems with any of these towers or sectors, then that could increase the range or projected coverage zone of sector 22042.
It certainly can.
And it would expand it out into downtown Seattle.
That will depend how many sectors or how many cells are off air.
Okay. If we look over here to, the southeast of Sector 75, we have a yellow shaded area. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
That's also an area covered by the tower that we're discussing. That's Tower 75.
That is correct.
This is Sector A.
That is correct.
So it's the same tower, but it's a different sector pointing a different direction.
That is correct.
And this is the tower, or the sector that goes kind of southeast and includes part of I-5 and Lower Capitol Hill.
That is correct.
And that sector is on the same tower that had the maintenance issues that we were discussing.
That is correct.
You talked on direct examination a little bit about how call capacity can affect the ability of a particular phone call to connect with a particular tower. Is that true?
That is true.
And so if traffic on a particular sector is really high, then another sector is going to have to pick up the slack.
It does, and we have to design it in such a way through the, we call those parameter changes. Those are more of soft variables that we can twist, and yes, it can.
Okay. So let me just go back to my example here with the yellow shaded zone. Let's say, for instance, that I was driving down I-5,
Correct.
and I'm in the yellow zone, and I make a phone call,
True.
but Sector A here, which normally governs this yellow shaded area, is full.
Right.
Okay? It's at capacity.
Sure.
Can't take any more calls.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm still going to be able to make a phone call, right?
It depends on how we design it at that specific instance. What is our design? In certain cases, we do allow a cell to go to another tower. In certain cases, we don't. And that's why sometimes you will have those call failures where you are not able to connect to the network because it's too much congested. Especially happens in stadium environments.
Okay. We were talking about that earlier.
That's
weren't we?
correct.
But isn't it AT&T's goal to try and make sure that everyone has coverage everywhere in downtown Seattle?
It is.
Okay. And so let's go back to my example. If I'm driving down I-5 and I make a call and cell sector C, that's the yellow zone, is overloaded, AT&T's goal or hope is that another sector would pick up the call so that I could still make a phone call.
It depends if we have, again, made the parameters that in congestion state it does go to the next sector, then it would, because there is always a balance between what kind of coverage and what kind of quality you're going to get.
But isn't it a possibility, for instance, that I'm on I-5, I make a call, it's overloaded, and one of the other sectors picks my call up?
There is a possibility.
Okay. That's a pretty good possibility, isn't it? Because that's what AT&T hopes, is that you guys have enough sectors that I don't drop a call.
We always don't design that way, and again the reason is because if you're getting served in yellow area by, let's say, teal shade sector, your call quality is going to get worse. So it's always a balance between call quality as well as coverage and capacity.
But isn't it a possibility, for example, that the red shaded area, 22042, picks up my call?
There is a possibility,
Okay.
and I will not be able to confirm at that time in 2006 what were our settings.
And if the call was picked up, despite being in what on the map looks like a yellow zone, then all of a sudden the red zone's bigger.
That is correct.
Okay. And so the projected coverage zones are all dependent on these many variables.
That is correct.
You can't say that this is an absolute representation of the coverage for these various cell towers back in 2006. can
Not
you?
absolute. That's these maps are created based on probability.
Okay. But even aside from probability, you didn't consider any potential maintenance issues for any of these various towers or sectors on the map.
These are static maps, and they are not able to use those scenarios.
And you also didn't consider any call capacity issues with respect to these many towers and sectors on the map.
No, this map does not consider capacity issues.
Mr. Gould, just to confirm, the phone call that we were talking about, that you talked about on direct examination, that was made on January 28th at 11:50 a.m. for 21 seconds, that call actually connected.
That call actually connected.
Now, Mr. Goyle, when you got involved in this case, you reviewed a number of materials that had been prepared and provided to law enforcement before you got involved in this case. Is that true?
There were documents which were provided before I got involved. That is correct.
You got involved in this case sometime in August, is that fair to say?
Early August.
Okay. And there were some additional materials and maps provided by AT&T to the detectives in 2011. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay. And did you review those materials when you first got involved in the case?
I did.
Okay. Was there a Mr. Mark Lehman who worked at AT&T?
That is correct. He's my peer.
He's your peer?
That is correct.
So he's also a radio frequency engineer?
He is.
And how long has he done that?
I think maybe last 10, 15 years.
Okay. And when you reviewed these materials that were provided to law enforcement prior to your involvement, was that done for the purpose of familiarizing yourself with the case and the facts and the prior work that had been done?
That is correct.
And was that important for you in order to understand the case and reach ultimate conclusions in the case?
Not reach conclusions, but yes, understand what is being provided and what information is there.
Okay. And did you review maps that Mr. Lehman had provided to detectives back in 2011?
Correct.
Okay.
Defendant's Exhibit 77.
You want to have first witness?
You may.
Mr. Goyle, I'm handing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 77 for identification. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how do you recognize it?
Because I looked at those before this case.
Okay. And is this a map that was created by Mark Lehman, who works in your engineering department, in 2011 for the purpose of providing it to the detectives?
That is correct.
And what does this map show?
This map shows if we had only this specific cell tower in place in the whole Seattle area, how far the signal could go.
So is this a map showing the signal range and strength of cell tower 75B?
This shows the range, but not necessarily the signal level, the quality.
Sure.
So you may get served, but the quality may not be as good.
Okay. But I'm asking, does it pertain to the same sector that we've been discussing, 22042?
It does.
Okay. Your Honor, I would offer defendant 77. And Mr. Goyle, what color on this map is reflected by the signal of 75B, otherwise known as 22042?
Green?
Green, okay. And what does it cover on this map?
Seattle, downtown?
Okay. Does it cover about half of downtown Seattle?
Yes,
And does it also cover a sliver up on Capitol Hill?
it does.
Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury? And this was a map that AT&T provided to the detectives, is that true?
That is correct.
Or if I may have one moment. Mr. Goyle, with respect to your statement that if a phone connected with sector 22042, you're saying it's a 90 to 95% probability that it would have had to have been in that zone. That's what you said on direct examination?
That is correct.
That's not based on any statistical calculations, though, is it?
The way we design our models, when we came up with those formulas, which we call models, those are from simulations. We drive the areas, we drive the whole area, and then we try to fit that model so that a certain percentage of samples fit within certain range.
Okay, but you didn't do any calculations to reach the 90 to 95% figure.
Those modeling is based on probability itself, because when we say that, okay, this model is tuned for that specific geography, we already have that probability, that how much is the probability of this model being accurately reflecting what is going to be in the real world in the sense from the drive data.
But the 90 to 95%, that's just you kind of putting a number on it, how good you feel the model does.
That is correct.
Okay. And again, the map that we've discussed today doesn't take into account maintenance issues of any of the towers,
It does not.
and it doesn't take into account call capacity issues.
It does not.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Hopefully not long, we work at finishing, just go a few minutes late, I should be done by tomorrow. Mr. Boyle, I want to show you or hold up again Exhibit 77 that Mr. Offenbecker was just holding up. Now, in my understanding, this is showing if there was just one tower in the downtown area that AT&T would expect that calls in all these places might be able to be picked up by that tower.
That is correct. Just this tower in the whole area.
If it was just that one tower. So in other words, going back to Exhibit 73, if all these other black stars were gone and we just had 75, that's just showing the coverage area that might exist if that was the only tower there.
That is correct.
Okay. If there's all these other towers, when you're out in some of these outlying areas, you're going to get picked up by another tower, most likely not Site 75. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Offenbecker was asking you about the fact that towers and sectors on towers can get busy and maybe get overloaded. Is that something that AT&T takes into account as they are continually refining their system to make sure they have enough towers in coverage area?
Absolutely. We provide enough capacity. We design enough capacity so we don't run into blocking issues.
So if you learn from your data that a particular tower or even a sector of a tower is getting a lot more activity, is it possible you would have to put a new tower in?
We either augment the same tower with more capacity, which is adding more radios in there, or we will add a new cell tower.
And you talked, you mentioned earlier when Mr. Offenbecker was questioning you that AT&T has pretty good reliability in terms of all of this. What were you meaning when you were talking about that, when he was asking you, towers can all have problems, towers don't work all the time. You said you have pretty good reliability. What did you mean by that?
So we look at a few metrics to assess how our radio network is working.
You look at a few, I'm sorry, I missed the word.
Matrix.
Matrix? Okay.
So two of those major ones are we call retainability, which is drop call rate, and we strive for less than 1% drop call rate. Another metric is called blocking. Blocking means how many times people try to connect to the tower, but they are not able to connect to the tower. And for that one, we strive for 98% blocking rate.
Meaning that 98% of the time they're not going to have a blocking problem.
That is good.
And so I'm assuming, and let's talk about maintenance, part of the way that you maintain these rates, like a less than 1% drop rate, is that to closely monitor your towers?
Absolutely. A lot of components play in that, starting from our design to maintenance to operations.
I'm trying to find that maintenance log exhibit. Do you have it?
I think I...
Oh, you have it. Thank you. You can hold on to it. When there's let's look at the exhibit you have in front of you. There's an indication that there was a trouble ticket, I think, on one of the entries that council was asking about. That I think it was January, which one was it that had the trouble ticket? Do you see that on there? Oh, January 30th of 06. It says trouble ticket.
Did you look at Exhibit
Correct.
76?
Yes, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
That was never offered.
Yeah, I don't believe it was. That means what? Is that when there's been an indication sent that there may be an issue with the tower?
That is correct.
And when that happens, how is somebody alerted to that? Does it come through computer? How would AT&T know to even go out?
It goes through a computer to the cell technician via email that there's a problem, and that technician gets dispatched.
And is AT&T generally notified relatively quickly in time if there's any hint of an issue at a tower?
Absolutely.
Looking at this exhibit that council was referring to, he indicated, I believe, there was 12 entries. I didn't count them, but is there any entry on this page that indicates the tower was ever not working or broken or offline?
I can quickly look at the other entries, but the initial ones, or at least from 118 to 130, it doesn't indicate that the tower was not working.
How about the other side? Is there anything that says it's not working?
I
Go
will
ahead.
take a very quick peek. No, mostly these are either adding a new network element or some kind of audit on the right side.
So this doesn't mean the tower was broken at any point? This doesn't mean the tower was broken at any point, according to this list?
It does not reflect that tower was not transmitting.
And is it pretty routine for there to be maintenance work such as what we see reflected on this exhibit?
It is not uncommon.
So going back, Mr. Gold, to Exhibit 73, which is the best server coverage area that you created from January of 2006 data, you've been asked a lot of questions about towers being busy, about towers being broken. Is it still your opinion that this coverage map is 90 to 95% probability as being the correct coverage area?
It is my opinion, but I cannot say for if anything was not working on surrounding sites or sectors or something was not transmitting.
Right, and that's why it's not 100%, I'm assuming, is part of the reason it's not that.
90 to 95% is just based on the modeling that we have, and again, modeling does not consider the maintenance part.
The individual towers having a malfunction.
That's correct.
And by modeling, you're talking about what you described earlier in terms of the driving tests that are done to collect and create the data, to create the equation that tells AT&T how far each tower is going to cover.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Your Honor, if I could have one moment.
Your Honor, I think the only thing at this point is we'll offer defendants 76.
Admitted. You may spend that line.
Thank you.
We'll take our lunch recess.